Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. A delight, as always, to have with us Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She is the president and the founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and one wired-up lady. And I love her spirit. She just returned from Israel, and we want to talk to her about that, where they're making a film over there. Hi, Laurie. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Perry. Good to be back.
Great to see you. Well, listen, you were there, and first of all, tell us about your new film project.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, the whole boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is really starting to heat up here in the United States. It's always been a problem, or it's been a growing problem over the last 10 years in Europe. But because we're seeing this growing movement here in the West, we decided it's time to take this issue on. And you know me, Perry, I'm not going to back down from anything that's controversial. But, of course, we went to Israel to begin production of our next documentary film called Israel, the Apartheid State? ? And, of course, we're producing this documentary for the millennial generation. Our goal is to start having a discussion and exposing what this whole boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is really all about. And, of course, there's a Supreme Court justice in Israel who recently called BDS political terrorism. And I completely agree. Of course, I would add the word that it is also based in the age-old hatred of anti-Semitism. It's an anti-Semitic movement. You know, we saw in Nazi Germany the boycotting of businesses. I look at what's happening today as a similar issue, although now it's happening on a global scale. It's companies, and sadly, Perry, it's even Christian churches who are divesting their funds from Israeli companies or businesses that do business with Israel to put economic pressure on Israel. And you know, we all know the scripture in Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. In the United States of America, if we don't address this issue and we confront it, we stand to risk also being affected economically, because a lot of the companies like Intel, Microsoft, Apple, Motorola, Caterpillar, a lot of these companies are U.S.-based companies that will be directly affected by this attempt to put pressure on Israel politically to back away from her ancient homeland. So we were excited to be able to go to Israel, and so we were on a mission in search of apartheid Israel. And it's interesting because, Perry, we did some great interviews. I spoke with 3 Arab Palestinians, and 2 of them live in Jericho. One lived in the Gaza area, and they work in the biblical heartland called Judea and Samaria. Of course, the world wants to term those regions the West Bank. And so I was able to speak with one gentleman who had been employed. He was a plant manager of an Israeli Jewish business. He had been there employed for 4 years. I spoke with another woman at another plant from Jericho. She's been employed by an Israeli business in Judea for 16 years. And then I met with a plant manager of this company who had been with the company 26 of the 30 years that they've been in business. So, of course, I said, so we hear that, you know, the Israeli government and the IDF doesn't treat the Arab Palestinians so nice. And so it was amazing to hear some of their responses. And I'm looking forward to finishing this project and sharing their story with the world, because one of the questions that we asked each one of them, if Israel has to give up this territory, this region, Judea and Samaria, how will that affect you individually? And they all said the same thing, that if Israel gave up that region, that the Israeli company would have to move and they would be out of work. The woman I interviewed said her family would die, because there is no work in the Palestinian Authority. Of course, we know that the Palestinian Authority keeps its people oppressed and suppressed to continue to further its anti-Semitic attacks against Israel. And it was quite a story to hear these individuals, to speak with the owner and with these employees, them talking about how their companies, their bosses have picnics for Arab and Israeli employees. And I thought this was interesting because even during the holidays, these Jewish businesses would have celebrations for their Muslim employees. And so you have in these plants Arabs and Israelis working side by side. Even during the war last summer in Gaza, there was no friction going on in these plants. These people said the same thing. They just want to be able to work. They want to live in peace. They want to raise their families. So why isn't this story on the evening news, Perry? I want to know.
Let me ask you this. Most of these companies you named and others are publicly held. Who's putting the pressure on them to do this? I mean, is it within themselves? Can their stockholders counter what they're doing? Or is it coming from some other sources?
These are external forces, and a lot of them, as I stated initially, is coming out of, a lot of the pressure is coming out of Europe. In fact, there was a document that was released by the European Union leaders who were talking about putting pressure on Israel and pressuring by pressuring these companies that do business with these Israeli companies. So it's not the companies that are doing business there. They find, doing business with Israel is very profitable. It's good for their company. It's good for business. It's good for Israelis. And so it is. It's external. It's an attempt to put political pressure on Israel to make concessions. And, of course, a lot of it comes out of the United Nations. You have these world leaders who are calling on this initiative, this boycott, divestment, and sanctions effort. And, bottom line, it's an attempt to delegitimize Israel's right to exist. It's similar to the old anti-Semitism that we saw that was anti-Jewish, but now they've kind of morphed. And now the anti-Semitism is not just anti-Jewish, but it's anti-Israel and it's anti-Zionist as well. Its goal, of course, is the same, to delegitimize Israel's rights to her ancient homeland, ultimately to dehumanize the Jews. And one of the things that I found when I was in Israel last week, and we were filming these interviews, Israelis, we did a lot of press. We had a lot of press coverage while we were there, doing print, on camera, and radio media. And the response that we heard from Israelis was the same across the board. They could not believe that a Christian organization would be taking this issue on globally on their behalf, and how much they appreciated, and they wanted me to go back and tell Americans and tell our base of support Christians how much they appreciate us standing with them against this, to help them expose this effort. And so our goal with the documentary film is to have it completed in time for our annual event at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. I know you'll be there, Perry. Of course, we'll showcase it there. We'll premiere it there, and then we will push for its global release again in over 200 countries, reaching over 900 million homes.
Now, you have taken this right to your own home state, got your legislature to do an initiative here, and I guess now 26 other states are looking at this as well?
Yeah, it's really surprising, and it's very exciting. We started out with this resolution to start educating not just the citizens of the state, but even our state legislature. Perry, we're seeing a growing number of university campuses that are hosting violent anti-Israel BDS demonstrations. And so we didn't have the problem in Tennessee, so we decided we're going to get out ahead of the curve. We're going to start educating our legislators so that they'll be aware of this, because really our universities are governed, it's the state legislature that oversees these universities, these campuses. So we thought, okay, let's do this, and we'll launch a media campaign alongside of it, and we'll start educating citizens citizens and parents across the country who are going to be putting their children in universities here across the state, and making them aware of the threats that are going on in a lot of universities, like in Florida, in New York, in California. And so, ironically, the Monday that I started to lobby for the passage of this resolution, that weekend before, there were two events, or there was one major event that happened on the college campus, on Vanderbilt University's campus, where the AE High building was spray painted with swastikas. Not only did they spray paint the swastikas on the outside of the building, but they also got inside the building, went down to the basement, and spray painted the swastika on one of the basement doors, essentially telling the Jewish students on Vanderbilt's campus, you're not safe in your fraternity house, you're not safe on the campus. And of course, it made it very easy for me to go in to meet with our legislators and ask them, did you hear what happened on the campus of Vanderbilt and this weekend? And they said yes. And I said, this resolution addresses that. We had overwhelming support. We had one dissenting vote. And now, as a result of what we did, Indiana was the second state to pick it up. They passed their resolution 2 days after ours. And now, as you stated, we have a total of 26 states on board. And of course, we have heard from yours truly, Oregon. So we're excited about working with you all, Perry, in pushing this resolution to start educating your state legislature as well as the citizens across the state to stand against this. And, we look at the numbers. There was a recent poll that stated, a Gallup poll, that stated 70% of Americans support Israel. But if you listen to the naysayers, if you listen to the BDS proponents, you would think that number is diminishing, that BDS is winning. It's not. Americans get it. Americans are not stupid. We understand a terrorist threat. We understand that Israel is facing a daily barrage of terrorist threats. When I was in Israel, just within the 9 days that we were there filming, we heard 3 incidents where people were run over by Palestinians, Jews, run over in the street, police officers and civilians. And I don't know if that made the news back here in the United States. I didn't see anything on the internet, but this is a daily occurrence. This is what Israelis have to contend with on a daily basis. Americans get that, because we wouldn't tolerate missiles raining down on our communities, and we wouldn't tolerate people just running people over in the street or trying to kill people or kidnapping our children and murdering them. Wow. It wouldn't happen.
Wow. Let me take a quick break here, Laurie. When we come back, I want you to also comment on just the overall climate there now, since you were just recently there. Give us a comment there. We'll be right back with Laurie Cardoza-Moore. And again, PJTN, is it .org or .com? What is it?
.org.
PJTN.org. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and delighted to have with us Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She's the founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation. And by the way, her website is pjtn.org. Great resource. Get a copy of Israel Indivisible. You've got to have that one. And now she's in the makings of a follow-up to that, and it's an incredible story dealing with the whole subject of what they're calling BDS, which is Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions against Israel worldwide, and she's commenting on that. But Laurie, you're just there, and Netanyahu barely gets his government put back together after his election. The Middle East is exploding all over the place. Iraq's totally upside down now. What's your feel from being there?
Well, everything is, business as usual in Israel. And even though the world is raging against Israel and the pressure continues to build with all the enemies around her, I'm telling you, Israel is functioning and moving forward and is not skipping a beat. While we were there, I had the honor of presenting our Tennessee resolution, anti-BDS resolution, to the Speaker of the Knesset. I met with several Knesset members. We did interviews with them for the documentary exposing the BDS movement. And the sentiment there is, it's positive, it's upbeat. Interestingly enough, Harry, the foreign minister, Hotevli, Knesset member Hotevli, a woman, there was an article that came out last week after we returned, and she basically stated she had a conference call with over 100 members of the foreign ministry globally and told them we are to start making our case using the Bible, using our historic, biblical ancient rights to this region. That is very exciting. And the fact that it's coming from a woman is even more profound. So I'm excited to see what is going to happen with the Israel now making this argument for itself, because historical, archaeological evidence bears out Israel's right to her ancient biblical homeland, and of course the legal component. And as you well stated, encouraging your audience to go to our website at pjtn.org, order a copy of the Israel Indivisible documentary, and watch it, because we address all of these issues in that documentary film. It's very well put together. It's been nominated for 2 Emmys. We've won numerous awards for it. But the sentiment on the ground is Israelis are going to do what Israelis have to do to survive. And it encourages them to see Americans doing, especially Christians in America, coming to their defense, standing with them side by side, letting them know you're not alone. We are with you. God is with you. And that brings great encouragement and great relief to them. So it's important what we're doing. And, I spoke with one of the members of Knesset who is actually Ethiopian. And he shared his story, and we're going to be excited to share the story in the film. But he shared just briefly his story about how he was airlifted from Ethiopia with a total of 60,000 Ethiopian Jews and brought back to the land of Israel. Now, this man is full-fledged African, and he will tell you that Israel has given him the opportunity to be able to sit as a member of the Knesset in their parliament. He talked about how he was given an education. He came from a small village in Ethiopia where he lived in a hut with no running water. And he was brought into the the nation of Israel. He was educated by the Israeli government. He has health care through the Israeli government. It was just a profound story. And so we hear of the oppression of the Arabs, the Palestinians, and Perry, it's just not happening. Here you have an Ethiopian who is now a member of Knesset who talks about the advantage that the Israeli government gave to him and the opportunity they provided him to be in a place of leadership that he is today.
Laurie, during the campaign, Prime Minister Netanyahu kind of wavered on the two-state issue. Where is he now from your perspective?
Well, he has publicly come out stating that he wants to try to go back to the table with Abbas to discuss the two-state solution. But, Perry, you know my position. There was a two-state solution. It was in 1948 when the world finally decided to carve out a little sliver of land so that the Jewish people could be put right back into their ancient homeland. And unfortunately, the Arabs are unwilling to honor that, even to this day. Yeah,
well, that continues to be the rub, no question about it. Are you getting any, back home in the United States, are you getting any more additional national attention on this BDS deal? I mean, are people of the Congress beginning to sense it?
Well, we do. It's interesting because Congress has introduced a bill that has gained bipartisan support. The state of Illinois has also introduced legislation that is slightly different from ours. It's to basically penalize any company that would boycott, divest, or sanction Israeli products or goods or businesses. So that's very positive. And of course, the United States has a long history of condemning this. There was an effort back in 1948 when Israel was first birthed as a nation, where the Arabs tried to boycott Israel, and it was unsuccessful. The United States government, Congress, has passed several laws reaffirming and protecting that our unique relationship and condemning boycott, divestment, and sanctions. So it's not a surprise that Congress is taking this issue back up again. Similarly, we look at the state of Illinois, and Illinois, I believe, went further in their language, where they stated specifically that there will be no boycotting of businesses anywhere in Israel, including Judea and Samaria. So that's very exciting to see that effort. And Tennessee will be taking that issue up in January 2016. We will also introduce that legislation, where ours is a resolution. The resolution that we introduced and that is now making its way through 26 states across the U.S. is an opportunity to educate our state legislatures and to also educate the citizens of our states about this growing threat. Basically, to kind of prime the pump or prepare for legislation to follow, where not only will Tennessee not support businesses that will boycott, divest, and sanction Israel or Israeli companies or companies that do business with Israel, but that we will also invest in Israeli ingenuity as well as a state through our pension fund. So it's very exciting to see what's happening, of course, with our efforts, with the resolution, with the state of Illinois and its legislation, as well as the federal government. These are all important initiatives. And then by February of 2016, we'll be launching this documentary globally to expose BDS as the latest anti-Semitic movement. And we'll get people educated across the country, specifically, of course, Christians.
Well, Laurie, you're a delight. Thank you again. I just want to say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to pjtn.org. It's an incredible website with just mounds of material there for you, and in particular, get a copy of Israel Indivisible. I think you'll find that to be, it's one of those tools you can play in your Sunday school class, in your Bible group, at your church on a Sunday evening or something. It is terrific. Thank you, Laurie. Look forward to seeing you soon, okay?
Thank you, Perry. God bless you guys.
God bless you. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. Not every day you get to interview your own son, and I get to do that today. Our oldest son, former State Senator Jason Atkinson, on a couple of issues. The first one is, you probably have seen and read in the news that he's been now serving on a commission with the Oregon State Fish and Wildlife Commission. I want to talk to him about that, and then we'll get into his movie, but good to see you.
Nice to see you on a new set.
Well, yeah, thank you. What is your job as Commissioner of Oregon Fish and Wildlife?
Well, you know, the job is, it's like a board of directors. The commission works directly for the people of Oregon, but it also is the watchdog of the agency to make sure that the agency is doing its mission, make sure that it's run in a way that is financially feasible, financially stable. And it also sets policy. The interesting thing about this commission is that it actually does hire and or fire the executive director, which is unusual compared to some other commissions that we have in Oregon. Commissioners serve at the pleasure of the governor. The governor recommends, the Senate appoints, and yeah, I've been on the commission formally now, I think 3 days, and I haven't even. Our first meeting is a little bit later, but it's an honor to serve. I didn't think I would do this. The former governor, Kitzhaber, asked me if I would consider this, and I said as long as it doesn't interfere with my other work on the Klamath and other things. And then the current governor asked me if I would continue on and do this, and you know, I believe in public service. I think this is it's an honor to be asked to do it, and I'll see if I can't lend a hand to fixing a upset.
I want to get into the
agency.
problems there. How long is your term?
4 years.
4 years. And some other gentlemen were elected at the same time. So how big is the commission?
It's a 7-member commission. It is 1 commissioner for every congressional district, and then 2 at large.
2 at large.
Yeah.
All right. You're taking over an agency that's admittedly $30 million upside down. A lot of reasons for that. One is maybe people aren't buying as many fishing, hunting licenses as they have in the past. And yet, you've said it's the crown jewel, one of the crown jewels of the state. Where do you start fixing a problem that big?
Well, it's systematic. The issue with the agency is just like most of state government. You run on a panic. You don't run on a plan. And so a lot of these agencies, and Fish and Wildlife being one of them, they're just trying to get the legislature out of session, get their budget passed, and then breathe a sigh of relief for the next 2 years,
months, yeah.
Right, until the legislature comes back. And what happens is the legislature will oftentimes require an agency to do something that is outside of their mission, and so they have to spend money on that. There's lawsuits. I don't know where all the bodies are buried yet, but I would say that you've got an agency. In this case, something I care and think a lot about. This particular agency is based like on a house of cards, like a lot of them are. And so you have this broad mission to fish and wildlife, and yet you only have so many members of the population of Oregon, under 4 million people, that actually participate in funding the agency. So Measure 5 was passed, and so now most of this agency is funded purely off of fees that it gets from hunting and fishing license. And yet people that don't buy hunting and fishing license, who like to look at birds, for instance, have a huge demand on the agency. So you've got this population that's supporting it, and it's twice as big, it's half the size of the actual constituency of Fish and Wildlife. And then the other thing that you add on to the fact is that baby boomers came from quite a few kids. They had less children, and then people my age got married later and had even fewer children. So what has happened is you have this bubble, this funding bubble of people who are baby boomers who prop up the entire agency, mostly men, and that number is dwindling. So you've got this cycle of people are complaining that there's not enough fish. People are complaining that there's not enough birds or wildlife. Fewer and fewer kids are going fishing. Fewer and fewer women are getting involved. And so you have a dwindling population base with an overgrowing abundance of demand. So it's going to be, I told the governors, I said, look, I'm privileged, I'm happy to do it, but I'm not a rubber stamp. I mean, if you want me to fix something, I'll fix it. Just give me the tools to do it.
How big of a budget is it?
It depends. I should know. I should be able to recite that quickly, but I believe we're over $300 million.
So there's some things in there you could cut.
Don't quote me on that. I've only been at it 3 days.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
And yet, Oregon has some really great plans in the fishing and wildlife areas of dealing with species that are growing and populating again. The rivers, some of them are improving. Is there's some good things there.
There's a lot of good things, and there's also, I mean, I'm privileged enough to travel around the world and chase things that have fins and feathers. And there's no other state like Oregon. Oregon's the very best. I mean, we're better than Alaska. In Alaska, you can't, abundance of fish, but you can't fish every, year round. Here in Oregon, you can fish 12 months of the year. I love Montana, but those fish, half of those fish on the other side of the Continental Divide swim towards the Mississippi, which makes them kind of weird. We have migratory fish that Montana will never have. I mean, we are truly one of the crown jewels of the hunting and fishing community in the entire globe. We're better than Washington State. We have more access to Washington State. We have more abundance of fish and wildlife with fewer people compared to California. I mean, we really are the very best. And we have huge things that face this agency. We have an endangered species called the California sea lion that goes after another endangered species called the salmon in the Columbia River. So you've got this huge, massive population of sea lions who are eating our other endangered species. So if you shoot a sea lion, PETA goes crazy, and if you don't return enough fish, then the fish guys get very upset. So there's a balance that is out of balance. There's huge problems with goose. The Canadian geese used to fly past Oregon and go all the way to Mexico. Now they've got to Oregon and go, hey, it's pretty nice. And they destroy agricultural crops. And you've got a lot of out of balance issues you have to work on. And you're in a terrible political environment where everything you do is suspect. So, I'm actually giving you the reasons for me not to do this job, but it's too late now. I'm signed up.
How's our wildlife condition?
Depends on what species you look at. I mean, I think overall, this agency does a very good job of managing wildlife. If you right here in Southern Oregon, in one of my favorite places in the Klamath Canyon, there was just 3 breeding pair of bighorn sheep reintroduced after 100 years of not being there. You have tremendous growth in the turkey population, as we see here. But then you have issues like on elk habitat, where you have wonderfully managed state and wonderfully managed private forests and not very well managed federal forests. So federal forests are managed by lawsuit, ours are managed by a different ethic. And so we have a thinner forestry than the federal forests. So you have a lot of these wildlife that are moving off of federal ground onto private ground, and that creates contention. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Well, pretty exciting. Congratulations. We'll see after your first meeting if you're still taking in oxygen, trying to figure out how to fix a $30 million problem, but it should be a pretty good challenge. And how often do you guys meet?
I don't know. A very good friend of mine is the chair of the commission, Mike Finley, who I would only hope to have a quarter of his knowledge a decade from now. I mean, he's just one of the world's best at this type of work, and he sets the parameters. I would imagine that just me having been on the Senate Rules Committee for 14 years and having carried all the current commissioners or current members of the commission on the Senate floor, having relationships with all of them, and knowing them, I think we were going to have a really activist commission and probably meet informally more than we meet formally. I think they'll get a lot of good stuff done.
All right, take your commissioner hat off, put your filmmaker hat on. We're going to talk about River Between Us with Senator Jason Atkinson when we come back. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market. But at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and Jason Atkinson's with us today, and former state senator, and just recently appointed to the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission. And also, when he's not doing that, he's making films. But you've been in the process for quite a few years, making a film that was debuted at the Ashland Film Festival several weeks ago, entitled A River Between Us. A fascinating film, to say the least, and coming back to Ashland.
Yeah.
When? This week or next?
The 29th it'll play.
That's this
and
Friday.
It'll play in Ashland for a week,
Okay.
and then it's going to play in Klamath Falls for a week after that. So,
well, I
it'll
would
be great.
encourage you, if you haven't seen it and you're over in Ashland, go to the Varsity and check it out starting Friday for a week, all next week, called A River Between Us. Started out kind of interesting and ended up very interesting. What motivated you to do this?
Well, the motivation of the film certainly is because politics has failed. It failed a place that I care a lot about. It's failed a tremendous amount of people in various communities. Various communities along this forgotten place that they've been abandoned really for 100 years, and I really don't like when my friends get treated poorly. So. You know, 20 years of doing this politically, this time I decided, you know, one of those critical moments in your life, do you really believe in something? Are you going to do it, or are you going to coast? And so I decided I was going to really do it, so I put everything on hold, made this film, and we've already gone around failed politics. The film, we didn't plan on it debuting in Ashland. It did. It's already done quite a few festivals. It plays in Chicago at the Justice Film Festival, and then it goes east, and then it'll eventually go to probably broadcast and electronic. The Ashland and Klamath Falls screenings, as we're doing this festival rollout, which is a lot of fun and doing really well. We did work with some of our partners in the festival world and with some of our folks in distribution to make sure it was okay to run it locally, because I think there's an element of this film that I think is healing, and that's the motion of that's the portion of the film that I think is important for a local audience in Jackson and Klamath County to see just how much bigger the story really is.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to do. A friend of mine is trying to set up a pastor screening in Klamath Falls, which I think would be great. I think people have no idea. The size, the scope, the shape, the texture of this story that that we live right next to.
And the question comes out of this: can fishermen and tribes and farmers and power companies and miners and citizens all get along after decades of failed policy?
Yeah, I think there's certainly the element of what happens? Are you going to live in this super partisan world where if somebody doesn't agree 100% with you, then they're evil? Yeah. That's the world that we live on. If you will look on any other news outlet, that's the issue. The issue is, are you Republican enough? Are you an environmentalist enough? And if you're not 100% with me, then you're evil. Yeah. And that's really what we live in today, and which is tragic, sad, obviously. Yeah. However, what happens if you actually live the Beatitudes? Well, if you live the Beatitudes, there's a huge shot of humility that comes into, are you brave enough to do that? First of all, you have to be brave. Second of all, you have to be humble. And then thirdly, you actually have to be a servant. So what if you've been trained for 4 generations to hate somebody, and you decide, and you're praying for victory over the people that you've been trained to hate, and then all of a sudden you have this epiphany one day and you go, well, hey, wait a minute. I'm actually supposed to love the people that I hate, even though they're not 100% with me. Are you brave enough to do it? And so when you start to tell that side of the story, very quickly it becomes not about the Klamath River, it becomes not about cowboys or Indians or fish. It becomes much more human. And that's why I think this film's biggest support so far, as it's been rolling out, is on the East Coast. People who can't find this place on a map love the story because of the story. People here, it's interesting, people who watch it here still have a lot of bad reaction to even the idea of a film. My biggest critics, there's critics all over, and I get all this hate mail, all this garbage, have never seen it. They're just offended that I would take on the idea of the story. But as you've seen with the film, the film is so much bigger than...
Yeah. We got a little spot, just about a 60-second spot of what the film is about. And again, it'll be, again, available for you to see in Southern Oregon starting the 29th, which is this Friday, at the Ashland Varsity, and we'll run for a week, and then the following week after that it goes to Klamath Falls. But let me run for you now this 60-second promo on the film.
The Klamath River Basin stands to become the largest river restoration project in United States history.
The debate up here is over what has been a free resource, water.
Anybody who's involved in water issues has received death threats.
There are communities hanging on by a thread.
The federal government put them up the river, and they created this whole community based on water, and that's a high desert.
A dozen different ways to make power, but there's only one Klamath River, and there's only one salmon run that God made.
You're praying for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You're not praying for the right thing.
I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Fix this issue.
A lot of people think that some of these issues are just unsolvable. There's nothing we can do about it. We can.
Well, there you go. Largest restoration project in the United States history. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big statement.
Yeah, it is a big statement, and it's a big story. I mean, for the last 10 years, the biggest thing considered was whether or not Bristol Bay in Alaska was going to be mined by an out-of-country company. Mm-hmm. Before that, the largest thing was Yosemite and the fires, and before that, arguably, the largest thing was the Everglades. Mm. And so a friend of mine who's in the film, Mike Finley, I asked him, I was like, so let's go over size, scope, complications, political, history, the whole thing. What's bigger? And what's bigger than the Everglades? What's bigger than Yellowstone? What's bigger than Pebble Mine? And it's the Klamath. The Klamath is such a big, big project, a big, big story. It's so close to us, we don't see it.
All the ingredients to start this restoration project are on the table. Mm-hmm. To the point where even the polarization you talked about earlier now has at least gotten to the point where you can talk and communicate. I mean, it seems to me the door may be opening. The door is completely open, but there's a real lack of political bravery right now, which, you know, again, film will lead culture, politics will respond to culture. Mm. So, you know, I'm not frustrated by that necessarily. Mm. But yeah, all the ingredients are on the table right now. In fact, a lot of the opposition in the last for the last decade has fallen. You've got major natural resource groups that have always been vehemently opposed to any type of talk of compromise, now are supporting these agreements. So there's always going to be people on the right and on the left opposed. You actually have environmental groups in Portland that are opposed to dam removal because it's not 100%. And you've got people on one side that's, you know, it's a slippery slope. If you remove a dam, you're caving into a bunch of hippies, and, you know, you're going to come after another dam later. What's lost in all that is the truth that these dams have nothing to do with irrigation, don't really create power, blah, da, 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 da. But, you know, this is America. Why would we let the facts get involved with politics? So we're going around all that and not telling a political story, but telling a human story. The alternative, if you don't come together, what happens?
Well, it's a huge missed opportunity. I think, you know, there's these times in American history that you're giving an opportunity to do something big, and it's always on the cusp whether or not it happens. If you read the old Kennedy book, Profiles in Courage is not about, there's no chapter on somebody that went along with a group. That's not what a profile of courage is. It's somebody that does the right thing regardless of the cost. And I think those times come up in our history. I think in this instance, if we fail, I think we fail a generation of people. I think we fail to heal some really broken communities and some really broken people. And, lastly, we let the bad side of our nature win. And I can't find a time in American history where when we let the bad side of culture win, there was ever a positive outcome. So, failure is really not an option. I think we're going to get this thing completed. I think there's always going to be controversy. I think there's always going to be rock throwers. But I think at the end of the day, when the film is fully executed and all the political work behind the film, I think we'll be hugely successful. And I think that people who know what we're doing, people that know the larger story behind the story, I think you're going to see this model duplicated around the country. We've got interest from, I think, Thailand, some folks in Africa, certainly on the East Coast that again, couldn't find this place on a map, but are interested in, well, how did you guys do this? I thought water's supposed to divide us. And so now we live in a drought. Now the parasites are back, probably going to have another fish kill. And yet these people are still together. How does that happen? Well, we know how that happens, so let's show the world.
You've had one of two emotions at the end of the film. Either people are crying or a standing O.
Yeah.
Did you expect that?
No, I'm always shocked if somebody likes it. I mean, I've watched it too many times. I'm always shocked if somebody likes it. We showed last week, we had a festival screening in Portland, and it was to an audience of not Republicans. It was a sold out, it was full. It did very, very well. And the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. And people are not responding to fish, and they're not responding to politics. They're just not. The audience doesn't, they're burned out. Yeah, they're responding to people.
I'm trying to talk about the film without giving it away, because there's another element that has nothing to do with dams, water, fish, but the Beatitudes, as you would say.
Right.
And two groups of people in particular came together with about 40 years of division. By the way, your film brought that together. I mean, it was the making of your film that brought those two groups together.
Well, I don't think take credit for any part. I think the real bravery is when you see people like Greg Addington and Steve Kandra, and you see statesman-like behavior by Chairman Don Gentry, and you see tribal folks from the lower part of the river bringing salmon to a conservative community in Merrill, Oregon. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, there's always a period of discovery when you do these things anyhow, but I mean, in my very best day of writing, I couldn't have forecasted that so much of this film, and I won't give it away, pivots around a potato festival on a very small little town. But it does. I mean, and it really is true. Congress completely failed, and our neighbors in the viewing area of the Dove, our neighbors figured it out. And that's a lesson for everybody.
All right, it's going to be shown again starting this Friday, the 29th, and it'll air for a week there at the Varsity. Is there one showing a day? Do you know what that is?
It's on the website. Okay. We've got a website. It'll be on there. We've got a Facebook page. I think we'll run the spot here.
Okay.
I should know.
Okay, and then the following week it'll be over in Klamath Falls. And but again, check it out. It's called River Between Us. You can certainly look that up on Facebook, or look it up for the website, and check out the showings at the Varsity coming up starting Friday. Well, congratulations again from there to Chicago, New York, and around. The movie's making the tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll see what happens. All right, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.